Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Tanzania tries to take back its ailing tourism industry from the jaws of coronavirus by removing all restrictions on commercial flights. Visitors also don't need to be quarantined, but they're fierce that the country's ditching the precautions too soon. Also, one of the most wanted suspects in the orchestrating of the bloodshed of Rwanda's 1994 genocide appears in court in Paris. Survivors of the massacre, in which at least 800,000 people were killed, hope to see Félicien Kabuga extradited to face trial in Africa. Also, Kinshasa vows to investigate police officers accused of having slaughtered dozens of members of a separatist sect last month. Human Rights Watch accuses security forces of using excessive force against the Bundu DR Congo. But first, Tanzania's lifted all passenger flight restrictions and scrapped quarantining for travellers. Visitors had been subject to 2 weeks of isolation on arrival in a bid to prevent the spread of coronavirus. But in a bid to restart the vital tourism industry, travellers will now be screened for symptoms on arrival. President John Magufuli has been downplaying the number of cases in the country and refused to release data on infections for over 2 weeks. The US Embassy's warned of an exponential growth of cases in Dar es Salaam, and Magufuli's critics say that he is denying the risks. Regional correspondent Gonya Harrington tells us more.
President Magufuli was speaking at a church service near his country home near Lake Victoria, which is where he's been spending most of his time since the epidemic broke out in Tanzania in March. He told congregants there that numbers of coronavirus were drastically dropping in the country, and he seemed to be suggesting that the epidemic would almost reach an end quite soon and that restrictions could start to be lifted. Now, that's in stark contrast to other reports coming out of Tanzania. For example, the US Embassy gave a rather disturbing warning to its citizens just days prior to this, saying that the chances of catching the coronavirus in the capital, Dar es Salaam, were extremely high, and also that hospitals were overwhelmed. Now, Magufuli has been consistently criticised for his unorthodox approach to dealing with the virus. That includes advocating prayer and natural remedies as solutions. Opposition MPs have been extremely critical. They're now boycotting Parliament after 3 legislators died in the space of 11 days. And it's not just within Tanzania that there's been criticism. President Magufuli was notably absent from a regional meeting of the East African community that was meant to coordinate and harmonise coronavirus policy across the region. And here in Uganda, truck drivers coming in bringing essential goods from the port of Dar es Salaam have been testing positive for COVID-19. And that's really raised fears here that Tanzania could actually be exporting the virus through this cargo and truck drivers. And so while President Magufuli seems extremely confident that his measures have been effective in the country, that confidence certainly isn't shared in the rest of the region.
Gonya Harrington there for us. Now, one of the most significant suspects wanted in connection to Rwanda's 1994 genocide appeared in court here in Paris on Tuesday. An arrest warrant was issued for Félicien Kabuga in 1997 over charges that included genocide. The 84-year-old was living under a false identity when he was picked up in the French capital over the weekend. Laurent Berstecker has more.
Brought to court after 25 years on the run, Félicien Kabuga, one of the last key fugitives wanted over the Rwandan genocide, appeared before Paris prosecutors on Tuesday. His weekend arrest in a Parisian suburb was hailed by Rwandan authorities as a triumph for justice.
The message is that those who are still, running out and, hiding themselves, but justice one day will also bring them to court.
Wanted on 7 counts, including genocide and crimes against humanity, Félicien Kabuga is thought to have played a central role in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Kabuga owned a radio station known for broadcasting calls to kill Tutsis, and he is suspected of creating and funding the notorious Interahamwe militia, which carried out much of the killings. Kabuga fled the country after the genocide and has used as many as 30 aliases and false identities to elude authorities since. Now 84 years old, he was arrested Saturday in an apartment near Paris. It now falls to French judges to decide whether or not Kabuga will be extradited to the mechanism for international criminal tribunals.
Police in DR Congo reportedly killed at least 55 people in a violent crackdown on a separatist religious sect called the Bundu DR Congo. Kinshasa said that it's opened a secret military probe into security forces who Human Rights Watch accused of using excessive lethal force last month between April 13th and 15th. The rights group cites a death toll more than twice as high as that of the Interior Ministry. Clément Bonnereau has the details.
In its report, Human Rights Watch says DR Congo's police used, I quote, excessive lethal force against Bundu DR Congo, a separatist group whose aim is to restore the former Congo kingdom in the west of the country. 2 raids were carried out against the sect in April, including one that led to the arrest of its leader, self-styled prophet and former member of parliament, Rwandan Genocide. The raids were marred by violence. Authorities reported a death toll of 22 at the time. Human Rights Watch, however, says that at least 55 people were killed during those raids, citing more than 50 interviews it conducted with witnesses, victims, as well as government and UN officials. I spoke to DR Congo's Minister of Human Rights earlier, who told me that several investigations into last month's events are now underway. However, he says he thinks it's too early to blame authorities at this stage. One thing worth insisting on is that BDK, Bundu DR Congo, was itself responsible for widespread violence in recent years and recent months. Its leader had called on its followers to chase out people who were not of Congo descent, Congo ethnicity, leading to widespread riots in parts of the country. Rwandan Genocide was also arrested in 2017 after leading violent protests against then-President Joseph Kabila, only to escape prison with the help of his supporters a few months later.
Clément Bonnereau there for us. Now, Lesotho's Prime Minister has promised to back his replacement as he addressed the nation and officially stepped down on Tuesday. Thomas Tabane's term wasn't meant to end until 2022, but he was under increasing pressure to quit over allegations of organising the murder of his ex-wife. He's denied any involvement. He will remain the head of his ABC party for now. His replacement's due to be sworn in on Wednesday.
Here before you today to announce that the work that you had assigned me may not yet be over, but the time to retire from the great theatre of action and take leave from public life and office has finally arrived. I plead with the entire nation and leadership to give my successor our utmost support. It has been my greatest honor to serve in that capacity. I therefore to thank all Basotho from the bottom of my heart for the trust they bestowed on me. Where I've erred, I sincerely seek your indulgence and to forgive me, as I did not do so intentionally.
The US Supreme Court ruled that Sudan has to pay about $826 million worth of damages to some of the victims of the 1998 US embassy bombings. Khartoum's been accused of complicity in the al-Qaeda attacks in Kenya and Tanzania, in which 224 people were killed. Sudan's expressed its sympathy to the victims, but denies having been involved in the blasts. Well, finally, it will be played out by a Burkina musician who's released a single in praise of the health workers on the front line of the coronavirus fight back. Ali Verhouti pays tribute to the people taking on the pressures of saving lives during a global crisis and risking their own in the process. The song's called Stallions of Health, and it's a cover version of another popular tune. So enjoy and join me again if you can. Take care.
One way. Les agents de santé, que Dieu vous bénisse. Oui, c'est ça. Les agents de santé, que Dieu vous bénisse. Oui, c'est ça.